Welcome to Code with Kurt, the channel that brings you the latest Google Sheets and Google Apps Script videos. In today's video, we're going to talk about cycle counting inventory. And if you're not familiar with cycle counting, it is just comparing what you have in your inventory tracking system, which could be any kind of software, compared to what you physically have in the locations of your warehouse or your room. So it's comparing what you have in your system compared to what you physically have out on the floor or building. So what this does, this program is a program that kind of gets you through the process of cycle counting your whole inventory in a certain amount of days. So right now I got 30 days. So 30 days I want to physically cycle count my whole inventory to make sure every value's right every 30 days. I also have my locations in here populated. Every location of my warehouse right here. And then I got my cycle count. So what this does is it's going to give me a fraction of my locations to start out with. So I'm going to hit Start Cycle Count. It's going to randomly select 6 locations today at 9:27. So I put in what I have in my system. There, that's the inventory I have in my system. Now I'm going to compare it to what I physically have in there. So say I have exactly the same here. I'm a little off here. So that is where I got my physical counts today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save that. That's my today's cycle count. So I'm going to save that cycle count. And what's going to do is you're going to keep track over here. So here I got my inventory, my cycle count, and my percentage. Say it's 100%. So it's doing those, just those 6 out of all my locations. So that is complete. So then the next day I come into work. So I want to do another day's work. So I hit Start Cycle Count. And it's going to give me 6 random locations, more locations to cycle count. So this will do it for 30 days. And then when I'm done with my 30 days, I will have completely did a physical of my inventory out on the floor compared to what I have in my system. So again, this software you can adjust the days. Say you want to do it every 60 days or 120 days or every year. You just put the days in. And then what I do is I put all my locations in here. Right here. And this is where it gives you the sheet every day of what you need a cycle count. You can print this off, you can hand write it in, and then come back and type it in here of what your numbers are and hit save. Now you can also, instead of doing locations, you could actually do parts too as well. So I wouldn't do locations and parts, but instead of do locations, say you want to cycle count your parts. Say you have 200 parts that you want to constantly take a physical inventory of. So you could put all your 200 parts in there. Say you want to get through it in every 20 days. You just want to know, just keep track of it. You could put 20 days in there. And what it's going to do is it's going to randomly select so many parts for one day. You put your system inventory in, what you count it, and you can hit save. So that's just another way of keeping track of your physical inventory as well. So this is a kind of an aid to help you keep track of your inventory. I mean, also over here I have a goal percentage. Say you want to track at a certain percentage. You know, this is really not necessary. The whole point of cycle counting is just to get your inventory right in your system, basically, that measures exactly what you have on the floor. So I'll take you a step-by-step process of how I put this together. If you are new to this channel, subscribe to catch my latest videos. Let's get started with this video. Here I am on my new Google spreadsheet. I got it called Cycle Count Inventory. I got a header record of date here on A1, and then down here I got on A4 I got location, inventory, and cycle count. And those are the 3 headers, and this is on the cycle sheet that I've created. That is it. There's no formulas or anything. This is just all text here and a little shaded there for the background. And in my locations sheet, I got the locations, header here, cycle date, inventory, cycle count, percentage, right on E here, and then I skip F. I go to G, I got goal percent and total percent. And then from there, I just copy and paste all my locations here that I want to cycle count. So I got close to 200, about 198 of them. So that is my location sheet. My next sheet is my setting sheet, and this is where I set my days that I want to cycle count. So in this example, I'm just going to put in 30 right there. That's the end of this. This is just a header type record here. It's all as text with a background, and that is my settings. Locations, you can, another text field here is you could put in your, whatever your goal percent is for your cycle counts. I'm just going to put in 95 for that. And I'm going to go over to cycle here. I'm going to create 3 buttons here. One to start the cycle count, one to save the cycle count, one to reset the cycle count. So I'm going to go ahead and create those. And I go insert drawing. That's like this shape. Start cycle count. Bold it. And center it. And I'm going to hit save and close. And I'm going to move that up there. Now I'm going to create 2 more buttons. So now I have my 3 buttons created for my 3 functions that I'm going to show you. So I'm going to go to Tools. I'm going to go to Script Editor. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to copy in my Google Apps script code. I'm going to go ahead and save it. I'm going to give my project a name. Call it the same thing as my Google Sheet. Cycle count inventory. I'm going to hit OK. And now save. I will post this code below the video in the comments section so you can copy and paste it as well. I'm going to go through it. I'm going to start with this start cycle count here. And basically what I'm doing is I am doing the active spreadsheet of SS, and I'm doing location sheet object, the settings sheet object, and the cycle sheet object. And from there I'm getting the last row of the cycle sheet. And basically what I'm doing here is this first clause is checking to make sure that when you do start a cycle count and you got your locations here, that you fill all this in. It checks to see if this is filled in before you hit start again, because it wants to make sure that you have your last cycle count complete before you start a new one. So it's looking for inventory to be filled in, and it's looking for cycle count data to be filled in before you start a new one. So I want you to make sure you fill this out, save it, and then start a new one. So it's just a safety check. So it's going through and making sure that that column is blank and the other column is blank. And then if either or are blank, it's going to say previous cycle count not complete, and then it's going to return. So it's going to pop up an error. So then if it passes that and moves forward, we get our days data from our settings sheet. We get the last row of our locations row, and from there we get our locations, the last record of our locations, and we're divided by days. And that's going to give us the amount of locations we're going to do per cycle count. So it's that division. So if you do 7 days, it'll be 7 days divided by 198 locations, and that'll give you my total for the day. So I got that total for the day. Next, we're going to figure how many locations are left that we haven't done. And this comes to an effect is when we're getting down to the very end of our whole cycle count of the days, and we're going to see how many rows we have left. That means if we do our division by days here, say we get 7, but then we ended up with only 3 rows left. We're just going to do the 3 rows. We're going to look for 3 rows and do a random search for those instead of the 7, because it'll never find 7 locations. So that's what this handles here. It goes through, figures out the empty rows, and then assigns it if the locations left is less than our regular cycle count locations. So that gets assigned. Next we set up an array called cycle array. The next thing we're doing is we're getting the date in a string format. So I got this and this. This says set PO date. I'm going to delete that. That doesn't really have anything to do with that. So we're getting our date in a string format with month, day, and year. From here, we're going to do a do while loop, and we're looking for the locations that we have divided by the days. So we got it up here, cycle locations, unless we have like one or two left, then we're doing that value. So either one of those values, we're going to iterate through, we're going to get a random number. So I'm going to send the full total of my locations. Say I got 198, I'm going to do +1 on that. The randomization function I got set up here is this math random gives you a number anywhere between 0 and not quite 1. So like 0.99999 all the way through. So then you take that times your max and you floor it. And then that's going to give you, or yeah, you floor it here too. That's going to give you your random number, putting in your max number, getting your random number. So once we have our location generated, if we get a 0, we don't want to do anything about it because there's no row that is 0. If we do get the row 1 here, by any chance, this B is already populated, so it won't choose it. So anything we're looking for is 2, 3, 4, 5. That'll be empty. And once it's empty, I do have a logger statement here that's used for debugging. That's for this view logs here. If you run these functions singly, you can see what comes out here from this parameter, but this isn't needed. I can cross it out like that. The next thing you have is I'm loading the value. Once it figures out it hasn't been picked yet, then I'm loading the value in this array. And then from there, I'm going to location sheet from that same location that I found, and I'm setting a date in there. So that means it's taken for this cycle count. And I'm doing this until the length of my array is less than the cycle locations, until I get up to the value of my cycle locations. Then I'm going to opt out of the do while loop. And then from there, I'm setting the date on my cycle sheet. So I'm going over here. I'm setting this date here, and then from there I'm appending the rows from my cycle array to this sheet. So the rows that I have picked out for the cycle come in here under location right there. So the next function I have is the save cycle count. So this is once I got everything populated, the inventory and cycle count, all the values populated. Now I'm going to click the save cycle count. And from there, again, I'm doing my spreadsheet, declaration of object, I'm doing my location sheet, my cycle sheet. Here, I'm grabbing the last rows of data in the cycle sheet, and the location sheet. And here I'm going to the cycle row. So I'm going through my cycle sheet, starting at row 5. I'm up here, starting right there. And I'm going through, I'm grabbing the location, inventory, and cycle count. I'm grabbing all the values in this row as I'm cycling through. I'm carrying a 0%, just declaring it as 0. So now I'm figuring out the percentages of how the cycle count went. So I got my inventory 0, my cycle count 0. It's going to be 100% because nothing's really changed there. If my inventory is greater than cycle count, then I'm doing the cycle count divided by inventory times 100. Then I get my percent here, and this is rounded percent. If my inventory is less than or equal cycle count, then I'm reversing the division just to get the other percent. So I'm doing that times 100, rounding it, get my percent. From there, I'm going to my locations row. I'm going to find the value of that row that I have here. And here, say it's A1, then I'm setting the date, the inventory, cycle count, and percentage through that. And then I'm going back to my cycle sheet, and I'm clearing this out. clearing all this out, all the data here with these two statements here. And then from there, I'm doing a calculate total percent. And what I'm doing there is I am declaring my spreadsheet again. I'm doing my location sheet object. I'm grabbing the last row, my location row. I am setting a variable called total percent and total count. I'm going through each row of my location sheet. This cycle count, or I'm going through with a for loop for each row of these. I'm looking at the ones that are already populated with a date, and if they are, I'm adding the percent, adding up a sum of the percent. So I'm adding this, and then I'm also keeping track of what I'm adding. So I'm keeping a count and the total percent. And then from here, I'm figuring out the average percent. So if the total percent is 0, total count is 0, I'm doing 100. If not, then I'm taking total percent divided by total count to get the average percent of my cycle count as it's going through day by day. So I have that. Then I am setting my value over here on total percent. So the next thing I'm doing is my next function I'm doing is reset cycle count. I'm declaring my spreadsheet SS. I'm declaring my location sheet of locations and my cycle sheet of cycle sheet. And here I'm doing a pop-up question: is okay to reset your cycle count? And what this button does is it resets your whole form, basically starting it over from like day one. So it'll get rid of all these rows here, your total percent, and it'll clear out this form as well. The two things it will keep, or three things: it'll keep your locations, it'll keep your goal percent, and it'll hold your days in here as well. It just clears out all the data once you're in the middle of your cycle count. Just say you want to start over and start with less days or more days, or however you want to do it. It's just a simple way to reset it. It'll give you a question, yes, no. If it's yes, then it does the clearing out of the cycle sheet and the location sheet. So that's the end of the functions that I have set up here. The next thing is I'll assign these functions to the buttons. I'm going to start with cycle count. Start cycle count first. Go here, cycle. I'll put that in here. I'm going to hit OK. I'll go back over, grab my save. And then the last one is the reset. So I got them all set now. I'm going to hit my start cycle count. It should bring me up to my permissions. I'm going to hit continue. Select my account. Hit advanced. Hit my sheet down here. It's okay to edit, create, and delete on my spreadsheet. Hit allow. And that's complete. I'm going to have to rerun this because it's stopped for that permission thing. So I'm going to hit cancel up here, and I'm going to hit start again. So there it goes. It started my cycle count. It gave me 6 locations with a date. It marked them here through the sheet that those are the ones I'm working on. So if I quickly fill these out, I'm just going to do 100% on all these. I'm going to hit save. What it's going to do is going to mark my locations with the appropriate percentage. Here's one. I got the 2. Alright, it's got to complete it. It's getting my total percent over here. I'll go back over to cycle count. It deleted all this, ready to start my next cycle count. If I hit reset and run that, it's going to ask me if it's okay. Yes. and then if I look over here, it cleared out all my locations and my total percent. So those are the three main functions of this. So that concludes this video. If you have any questions or comments, please leave it below the video. Until next time.